the Khoi and San communities have received 12.2 million rand from the Rooibos industry as part of the first cycle of the benefit sharing agreement. This agreement, which was signed back in 2019, came after the government recognized the Khoi and San communities as the rightful traditional knowledge holders of Rooibos. Let's get you more on this now. Bringing the chairperson of the National Khoi-San Council, that's Cecil, Fleur, as well as the secretariat of the South African Rooibos Council, Marthane Swart. To both our guests, thanks for your time. It's great to have you on the program. Cecil, perhaps I can begin with you. Are you able to get us a bit more details briefly around what this agreement entails and how it came to be reached?
Yes, good morning, and good morning to all the guests. Good morning also to Marthane.
Good morning, Cecil.
Yes, I can only say that it is really a great achievement for the Khoi and San people, and it will go up in the annals of the history of the Khoi and San peoples, because this was the first step really in the direction of real restorative justice for the Khoi and San people in this country. So for us, we are feeling grateful for the Rooibos industry, who eventually came to the point where they admitted that the Khoi and San people were the first knowledge holders of the Rooibos plant and the produce that comes from the plant. So it was a long and winding road, and we had a lot of negotiations between ourselves, our legal advisors, and the Rooibos industry. And it took years to come to a point where the Rooibos industry could come forward and say, yes, we are now convinced that you are the knowledge holders of the Rooibos plant. So it was a long, very difficult road, but in the end, it developed in a very good relationship between the Rooibos industry and the Khoi and San communities on the other hand.
Sure. And that's great to hear. Marthane, perhaps I can bring you in the discussion at this point. I mean, help us distill what this recognition ultimately means. I mean, to say that the Khoi and San people are the rightful traditional knowledge holders of Rooibos, what exactly are we saying?
Okay, so what exactly are we saying? So I think it is important, I want to take us back a little bit. So South Africa as a country is a signatory of the Nagoya Protocol. And the Nagoya Protocol is a protocol that was developed on international level. And what this protocol recognizes is that industries start in countries, but industries also work with products or work with indigenous biological resource that has traditional knowledge on it. So this is really where it came from. So then this protocol was cascaded down into South African legislation. And in our country, this is not only applicable to Rooibos. So if there is traditional knowledge, in other words, if in the example of Rooibos, the Khoi and the San people knew about the Rooibos plant way back in the day when they were the first peoples of South Africa, then the onus is on industries who commercialize this plant to share benefit with the traditional knowledge holders.
It sounds progressive, and I guess the obvious question becomes, how do you quantify how much is due to these communities in a context where I guess industry itself has been able to make all kinds of returns? I mean, this 12.2 million rand as a start, how did you arrive to that figure?
Right, so this was a negotiated process, and I'm going to start, and then maybe Cecil can also come in.
Sure.
So this was part of the very long negotiation that Cecil referred to. And the point at which we fixed a point at the farm gate price of 1.5%. So if a Rooibos processor buys the Rooibos from a Rooibos farmer, that amount, so 1.5% of that amount then is benefit shared to the Khoi and the San. Cecil, do you want to add? Because it's been that was such a long negotiation process.
No, I think you are at the point. That was what transpired out of the negotiations, that we came to the point where we fixed 1.5%. Yeah, so that was the way we determined the share that will come to the Khoi and San people.
Okay, so there was a very clinical and steadfast formula, as it were, to be calculated from that. All right, and the reason why I'm asking this question is because issues around restorative justice sometimes feel quite elusive. I mean, how do you put a figure to something that is arguably very sentimental, has been part of a community way longer than anybody is able to tell, and quite frankly, its value is beyond monetary outcomes or whatever you can get from monetary value, so to speak?
Yeah, it is of course correct what you are saying, and for us it is not only the monetary value, but we are also looking forward to the non-monetary benefits that we can get out of this deal, and that is something that we will keep on negotiating with the Rooibos industry, and also with relatively also with the departments of agriculture and rural development, because I think we must work as a team to see how the Khoi and San people can benefit out of this in the most advanced steps of development, how they can help us to become real Rooibos commercial farmers as well.
All right.
Instead of just receiving royalties.
And that's where I was hoping to go with our discussion. Marthane, perhaps a final bite of the cherry from you. Receiving this kind of benefit is great, but many might argue it also creates a dependency. Does this agreement leave space for things like job creation so that these communities are actively part of, I guess, benefiting from whatever economic spin-offs that come from this industry?
I think that I just want to add to Cecil and the long road that became in our negotiation, and the realization of partnership beyond only economic sharing of royalties or levies. So in the 4-year period that we negotiated, I think the Khoi and the San peoples of South Africa, as represented by the Khoi and San Councils, and the Rooibos industry really moved closer together. And we started with a monetary benefit sharing. And even if you look internationally, it is challenging to define non-monetary benefits. But since we are in a partnership and since we are on a journey, this is definitely something that we will continue to engage on. And integration of people in. We also already have the Rooibos producing communities of Wuppertal and Highveld and communities in Elim. And they are part of the National Khoi and San Council. And also to see how these communities already involved in the actual production of Rooibos can be assisted, but also how we can expand and solidify the involvement of the Khoi and the San people in this.
It's great to hear, that there's such great agreement between the community itself and the industry, a rarity, dare I add, in this country, especially around these issues. So thanks very much indeed for your time. Marthane Swart is with the South African Rooibos Council. Cecil Fleur is the chairperson of the National Khoi-San Council. Once again, to both our guests, thanks very much indeed.